All right, everybody. Everybody get a cookie and coffee? Wake up a little bit. Getting ready for the big finale of the day. So this is an awesome panel. This is also another one that I'm passionate about. Mark, you and I partnered a couple of years ago. Early on, even I think pre-pandemic, we kind of compared notes. Accenture was a partner of Microsoft.
Yeah, and we're still going strong.
Big production partner. So I'm excited about this topic. So for those of you who do not have the notes in front of you, this topic is called How to Manage a Remote Production Video Workforce. So guys, kick it off. Have a great session.
Really appreciate it. We're going to cover, I think, quite a bit of ground here in a short amount of time. We want to focus a little bit on the tech, but we want to talk about the impact on people. Working remotely is a much different experience, as many of you probably already know. We want to talk about how we do that. The three of us on this side of the stage all manage teams that are positioned around the world. And it's kind of important to talk about how you deal with people in the situations that everybody faces, especially when things are changing in a live scenario. And so that's really important. And we want to touch a little bit about that. Zach, let's start with you. You're with WebMD and Medscape Studios, right?
Correct.
And
yep.
About 60 people, 50 to 70 videos captured a week?
That's right. Yeah, like over 3,000 videos now every year. Yeah.
And that's a decentralized team. You're in North America and Europe. So talk to us a little bit about how that team operates, how you manage a workforce that's in 2 continents.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for this. This is awesome, and it's been very informative. Yeah, the pandemic, obviously, we completely split, but we were always a little bit decentralized, just in the nature of our business, even though we had a home office in New York City with the majority of the team there. But really, the pandemic really forced us into this area, and the biggest challenge for us was just the media. Like, how do we keep track of that media? How do we all have access to it? We found a cloud server solution with LucidLink and how it works with Adobe, which we're already in, and that really, it completely opened everything up. Like, just broke down the walls. No one ever needs to be in an office again, which is kind of, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's nice to go to the office. We really enjoy it.
Slow down.
It's great to bump into people. It's definitely fun. But yeah, it's, like for us, like that was the big hurdle, was how do we just get the media, from our producers to our editors, and we're moving every day, 10, 15 videos, whatever we're producing. Now we're looking for editors overseas. We're looking at, in Europe and where we have producers, and we're able to kind of, increase our talent pool, which is kind of amazing. And to your first point, though, how do you manage that? It's taken some learnings for sure. Luckily, we project management software. Again, Adobe, thank you. I probably will say Adobe every time I talk.
Plug.
But Workfront, which is something maybe people don't know about, for us has always been our project management, and for like 5 or 6 years. And because we have that as our central, how we track every project, it just opened up all the possibilities again. And again, that is, really enabled us to be anywhere and just continue work. It's great.
And I think what you were talking about this morning, so we had a little side session. It was really fun. But you were telling us about some of the talent you're uncovering in other locations that you're just dipping your toe into the water in. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, again, it's, where New York City was the main, market where we have, 15 editors there, and they're a little spread out, of course, but they were all commuting, some of them, quite a bit. And now, because we have access anywhere to this media, we are absolutely just able to search anywhere. We have a couple folks, one of my team members is, one of my producers, senior producers, is a Serbian, and there's a huge film industry in Serbia, and so for us, like, oh wow. First of all, that time zone is great for us, right? Because we could be shooting in California, and we can have our editors start if they're based in Serbia. So, and they're all working off the same server. So it's really just opening up, our possibilities, which is great.
Luke, let's head down the line here a little bit. So at Shootsta.
You nailed it. Yep.
Yeah,
Shootsta.
Finally. All right. You got about 80 people. You said your high water mark was about 1,100 videos a month. a lot of content.
Yeah, it's a lot of content. It's a lot of content. We have folks that are producing content in 9 countries. Our major geos, we have kind of 5 major hubs of operation. And so, yeah, there's a lot of demands. We manage over 300 brands, right? That's an interesting part of what we try and do with that pool of 80 editors is keep track of people that have a lot of different requirements for their media production and what they anticipate that final output to look like.
And you're truly global, right? You've got people in APAC, you've got people in North America, and as well as Europe, right?
Yeah, 2022, 78% of our productions came out of APAC, but we have a growing customer base in both the UK and the US, so markets that we're really interested in growing. But the business originated out of Australia and immediately kind of went to Singapore and Hong Kong, so we continue to have success there, but
Yeah.
growing more here as well.
And you are focused more on post-production, right? You're not...
Yeah, so Shootsta is an interesting one because we have a lot of products, right? Some of them technology, a lot of them professional services. But essentially my role within Shootsta as the global head of production is to just look after folks that are making videos. So of those 80 people, there's less than 10 that focus on pre-production and producing. And the rest of them are animators, illustrators, and video editors.
Yeah, cool. And so from my perspective, the world I come from, we do that post-production work, we do the animation, we do the motion design, we do the creative, but we're very broadcast heavy. So we're doing 100 plus live events a month. And we've got a team in India, we've got a team in Prague, and we've got a team in North America, and we run studios and broadcast centers in all those locations. And it's an interconnected network of studios and control centers. And so we're coming from it, not just from a post-production side, but from a live perspective as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the challenges that we face, especially with these teams that are so far away from your home location. What are the biggest challenges that you face? And we've talked about quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought is a home location. That sounds really nice. I don't know that we have one anymore. I mean, Shootsta essentially was set up to enable editing in places where the customer was not, because we were doing it for scale and grew out of a traditional agency. So the idea of the editor not sitting right next to the client was it was an easy one for us. So yeah, there really isn't a home base of operation, which means everything essentially has to run on solid technology, but I would also say simple technology. I mean, we really focus on what in the process can be simplified. Our founder had a wild idea, recognizing in the traditional agency where they could do a video every month for a client, that the clients actually needed 2, 3, 4, 5 videos in a week. And he thought, well, wouldn't that be amazing if we could turn that around in 24 or 48 hours? So we've been working within this 24, 48-hour turnaround to post for a long time, and I think just having that constraint from the very beginning has forced us to think about everything differently. So it has to be fast, it has to be easy, and it has to never break. So, I would say when we're out shopping for technology, we're not looking for what is cutting edge. It's what is going to work every single time, and it's going to be simple for us to operationalize and implement across a team that is going to have 50 videos coming in tomorrow that need to be edited that we never knew about before, and they're going to be done by the end of the week. And those kind of constraints demand simplicity and technology that just works.
Agility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point, because some of the technology out now is just incredible. And the XR, I mean, I'm always like, I'm wowed by all this stuff. And we have, we dabble in that. We're able to sort of do that, sort of skunk works. But to your point, like, we got to deliver every day, and we just can't stop the train. It's like we're still feeding the system nonstop. And so for us to pivot to something new, like, that's where, once we made it to the cloud, that freed us up. That was actually a large pivot, right? Going from our brick and mortar server into the cloud. But once we do that, we don't want to touch it, right? It's working well. What are those incremental improvements we can make? And it's definitely fun to see all the new things coming out. And I'm excited to see where they go. And I'll keep playing with them. But we'll see how we integrate it into multiple videos every day. That would be exciting for sure.
Yeah, and we talked this morning about cultural expectations. And that is significant. It's noteworthy in that what we produce in India is not the same standard that we have here in the United States or in North America, for that matter. So So talk a little bit, you had a really good direction on this.
Yeah, no, we definitely discovered that as well. As I said, our original base of operation was in Australia, and I think the initial thought was, what if we just build a giant editing pool and service global customers? And you learn really fast that the editors need to have a cultural expectation similar to the audience. So if you've got Western video consumers, they're going to have a Western expectation of what that looks like. And to go out and ask people to produce media that doesn't look like what they consume on a daily basis, it's nearly an impossibility. I mean, I'm sure you can do it, but it's really difficult to do well. And the inverse is true. If I jump into a project that's happening for a client in Hong Kong, and I start to creative direct that project because I have feedback, they're going to hate that product. I mean, just guaranteed, right? They don't care about my perspective. So having really strong local production team leads that understand local culture is critical for us in delivering, client expectations from different locations.
David, let's bring you guys in here. Hey. A lot of ground here. React to kind of what you've heard in terms of the challenges with cultural expectations. Make our problems go away.
Well, I mean, I think you just heard it. The biggest step is trust in the cloud.
Yeah.
Because if I were to say that 2.5 years ago, whenever we would ask for anything, you would just start to say the word remote, and security would say no. Right? Like, it always takes a pandemic to make a change, which is just a horrible thing to say. But it's true, because I look at, what these guys are saying, and Zach and I have worked together for a while. I mean, think about what he was saying, and even you as well. It's like, you can have editors where the work is. So if an editor wakes up in the morning and there was a shoot in New York at 2 in the morning because it was some crazy MTV event or something, you've got an editor somewhere on the planet that can grab that work and get it done. It's a little different than what you were just saying, which is like, let's do the cultural thing. But for a lot of editing, it's like you can just wake up in the morning and you've got this cloud bucket. I know my assignment. I can just get the work done because I just trust that everything I need is there. And the people that are paying for that work, there's a trust there. I also trust, because, when I think about Zach's workflow as well, the hybrid workflow, right? The hybrid and the remote workflow are exactly the same. Zach, you just want to open up your Mac, and I just want my LucidLink volume, my cloud volume. I don't even know it is a cloud volume. It's just sitting there on my desktop, and you just edit. Like, you forget that it's the cloud, because they should be exactly the same. So just for me, it's just getting back to trust. The work can absolutely get done pretty quick and easy. And then all the things that go with it, the metadata, we get the stuff up in the cloud. What can we do with it? How can we render it? All that stuff comes second. So my 2 cents. And Dave?
Yeah, I think that trust in the cloud is obviously super important, and I think one that even a few years ago people didn't have. It's amazing how quickly people's perceptions will change. But I think another really important thing that I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about is, how do you keep track of everything? You've got 1,100 videos you produced in a single month, multiple editors, multiple teams that have to be working with that content, keeping it separated. Maybe there's security issues around that with regards to making sure that other teams aren't seeing what other content is being done on behalf of other customers. How are you getting that content in quickly? How are you organizing it? And how are you making sure that, I guess I shouldn't be asking the questions. This is your job. But
you're doing great.
I'm teaming them up to talk about how important it is to have a central repository of content somewhere, whether it is local, whether it's in the cloud, but that can support your team, because remote teams are great up until you can't find the content that you need, or you're sitting there waiting for something to download because you don't have the appropriate bandwidth, or the people contributing it don't. So I think that's a really important aspect to consider.
Yeah, and I would also add to that for you guys is the media's changing too, because I have a nickname for it. I call it click to cloud rather than Adobe's Frame.io camera to cloud, right? But you have all this media heading up to the cloud, and I think Dave's absolutely right with all this stuff coming, and even OBS to the cloud, Zoom recordings, all these things, which I know you do a fair amount of that too. How do you keep track of all that? Because you have to somehow help me find my media.
I'm going to go first so that Zach can give you a better answer, because the truth is, at Shootsta we cheated, right? Because we built our own technology platform, and the idea is that we're not engaging in pre-production meetings with you. You had a webinar yesterday, and you need the post-production back so you can publish it in 48, 24 hours. So our whole portal is designed for essentially capture of their requirements, upload of the media lives in the portal, and then that immediately kicks off a job that one of our production team leads is going to see. And then, obviously with that client, we've already built a database of their brand assets and things like that. So it's not an easy one, I think, to replicate, but because we're doing things at scale, and that was the business model, we built that piece from the ground up, and it's been a fantastic way for us to be able to facilitate what we're doing. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. Can we take a look at that?
We'll probably sell it to you. I don't know.
You've got a customer.
No, it's true. I mean, that is the key, right? There's so much content going up there. There must be 1,500 folders in our LucidLink, in our cloud storage. But I think we were fortunate in that we started with this project management software, Workfront, which luckily Adobe happened to purchase and is integrating into all the different product suites that they have. So for us, we're working in different divisions. With WebMD is our consumer brand, where we're doing documentary patient stories, infographics, social. But we have a professional side where we're doing doctor videos, where they're really talking about the latest breakthroughs and so forth. Completely different divisions, different scientific folks have to look at this. Content producers, editorial teams have to look at that side. And for us, Workfront is absolutely the brain. I mean, if that goes down, we're going to be in trouble. But everything is captured in there. Every project that we shoot is already got a whole timeline, different timelines associated. We plug into it, whether we need to write the scripts, we're in that mode. Sometimes it'll come from a scientific director, for instance, and we'll be getting a script from someone, so we don't have to be in that piece. But it really is, the project management has been essential to us. And I was not a fan of Workfront from the get-go. I mean, it just is not, as someone who's a creative, I think of myself as a creative, you don't want to be looking at timelines and charts and things of that sort. And I definitely was kicking and screaming, in it. But now I see the beauty of it now. It really is everything in one place, no matter what team we're working with. And it allowed us to move all the infrastructure. So we could move that. Nothing changes with our project. We're still in Premiere, but nothing else needed to change because we know where everything is, which has been great.
And David, to answer your original question here, very carefully, right? We organize and follow a process, and that process would be our Achilles heel. If we don't follow it and we don't stick to the plan, we're going to be unorganized and it's going to fall apart. Everything starts in our world with an event ID that gets created by our broadcast request site. It's a tool that we developed in-house, and it's how we label each project. That ID follows all assets all the way through. It kicks off file structure, and if we don't have that, there's a good chance we're going to lose it.
Well, it's funny because can you imagine editing 80 videos a week? And then you two were like, yeah, right? So how do you keep track of 80 videos a week? Most people out here are worried about getting just a couple of these out. And then you haven't even talked about variations on languages and all the different subtitles you have to have, right? And not to mention square, 9x60, I mean, all of these things, it's got to be part of the problem. So you need something to track all that for sure, so.
And you're saying Workfront is helping you do most of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the centralized location where we're able to track every project, not just video projects. Like that's where my world is, but every project that we do is being tracked in there with written article, infographics, slideshows, whatever. Everything's in there. So I actually can have visibility on those. But to have that central location now, there's room for improvement here because, again, as I said, we have these different divisions. They all use Workfront a little bit differently, right? They all kind of started in little silos. They're still there. I touch all these teams, and so we're now working on, how can we sort of, bring the language, the way people even, label things in a timeline together. But even still without that, we're able to have visibility into that whole the timeline, the process, where everything is located. And so it's definitely we rely heavily on it.
Yeah,
sure.
I'd also say we did hear from a couple of the speakers up here today talk about content supply chain, which we are working, frantically at at Adobe. And it really just, if you think about it this way, you guys are done with one video, it goes up to the cloud. That automatically kicks off several routines based on AI, right? Not, speech to text, the size like I'm talking about, different regions. Then it has to go down for final approval because a human should really go look at that and have some collaboration. And then, of course, we all know it has to get passed off to legal before it actually goes out to there. So the whole content supply chain is really just allowing you to do more. And the cloud, having this central, assets and videos up in the cloud will just help us get there quicker. So
where do we start? If you haven't gotten into cloud yet, if you haven't yet moved employees, I can't imagine anybody hasn't, remote, but if you're just trying to figure this out, David, where would you start?
Well, there's a lot of great SaaS solutions out there, so you don't have to build your own. Hats off to Shootsta for having done that, and clearly you guys have a technology as part of who you are. It's ingrained in your overall offering, so that makes sense. But not everybody has the resources to do that. And there's companies up here on this panel who have products that are fantastic. Adobe's got some great products, so does Sony. And that really helps people get off the ground very quickly. You don't necessarily have to go build everything yourself. The security that everybody in this room is going to expect, and more importantly, their cyber teams are going to expect, is core to all of those products. That's really important because I think we might have heard on another panel just before this, don't get started before you get your IT and cyber team involved because they can stop you at any given point in time, and that's true. And when you're working with some of the companies that you're seeing on these panels today, they've gone through those security reviews and those audits by the largest companies in the world and by the largest security bodies in the world. So you can sort of check that box very easily and stay focused on what's important to you, which is how do we produce the next great video.
Yeah, I would just add, I think what you said, Luke, at the beginning was just keep it simple, right? And all these tools like Workflow, you don't want to look at a timeline of 150 tasks. The whole point of that is to free up time for the creatives to do the work. Like that's the bottom line, is we want it so people don't have to go, where is that material? Like, where is it? It's just, so everything's set up so you can have the creative people do the work that they're meant to be doing.
You also ought to be able to use the tool that you want to use, whether it's Adobe or something else. One example is, our tool set works with David's tool sets over at Sony. So there's panels in Premiere and After Effects and other products like that. So you shouldn't have to be locked in to one vendor or to write it yourself, right? Which I'm sure is amazing. Now we all have to take a look. But, it's like, you want all these vendors talking, these partners working together so they get to choose that right tool for them. So I think that's super important to think about when you go to pick these pieces out. Can I use my favorite this or my favorite that? And ask that partner that question. So
we hear the words continuous innovation, pushing the limits of technology, continual adoption of new technology. At some point, we got to get into what we were talking about this morning, an operational flow, right? You got to give your teams time to actually sink their teeth into it, but explore, learn, grow, produce content, right? How do we balance, walk that line between continuing to innovate and actually making progress with the content that we need to produce on a daily basis?
Yeah, we had a couple of times today when we looked at each other and said, hey, that sounds really innovative and neat. Are you doing that? And we're all like, no, we're not doing that. It's funny to me to meet video engineers, and I definitely used to work in that role, and they usually say, I'm not creative, I leave the creative to somebody else. It's like, you are so creative. These engineers are so creative. You've just rebuilt the network 3 times in 6 months. So don't tell me that you're not constantly brainstorming, because you absolutely are. And sometimes it feels like we're building for opportunities to innovate, right? Rather than to deliver value for the business. And that operational flow is something that I feel the organizations we represent deserve video productivity. Not just cool new things, they really deserve to have content be created to forward their strategies. And sometimes I think we get a little bit detached from that goal. And so, yeah, we have to be purposeful. I know at Shootsta, we are just not going to shut down the production workflow to rework storage. It's not going to happen. We will collect feedback from everybody. We'll go through that process, and then we'll have a group of people that start working on the innovation in the next version of what will become operationalized But the videos that need to get done tomorrow have to get done tomorrow, and we're never going to shut the system down to just innovate or implement something new. And so, I think that that's something that the companies that we all represent deserve, our full time and attention to thinking about how do we deliver content for these people, not just brainstorm about what the next version of content is going to look like.
We talked a lot about, or we talked this morning a bit about how that pressure is put on us, put people in positions like ours where we need to give our teams the opportunity to work and get out of the way and corner off, block off, wall off the teams that need to test a new technology, give them the opportunity to do that, while the others go about the daily business and actually keep the lights going or keep the lights on. David, walk me through it. What would you tell your clients?
I mean, you have to embrace the change. We all know it's corny to say, but the only constant is change. And we always, our team particularly, we're always going out to customers as sort of their advisors and just say, look, that was the old way to use Photoshop. This is the new way. This is the old, because a lot of people they like a toaster that makes toast. Everybody at Adobe knows that's my saying. But that's not necessarily the case anymore, because I need a Darth Vader print on it, or whatever it is I need. You can't do yesterday's work like 10 years ago. You have to do it with today's changes. The cloud is just one example of that. The metadata, which we heard in the other panels, automating things with content supply chain due to what's the intelligence in that file. We're doing a ton at Adobe on AI for a lot of the things you heard today. They're in the labs, but I should be able to analyze a scene. That's going to help me find the media with, 3 men and a lady at the beach, with a car. You should be able just to search for that, almost like a ChatGPT query, and then have it come back. So having to catalog all this and scene identify, that's going to be another example of change where you're going to have to tell an editor there is a better way to find your media or to come out with media. I mean, just as an example. So just remember, the way you're doing it today is probably not the way you're going to do it 2 years from now. But you're absolutely right. You need a little sandbox to have a good team to go test that while the other team is embracing today's work. So,
yeah. What do you think, David? How do we walk that line between operations and innovation?
Well, operations pays the bills, right?
Right.
At least in the short term. So I have to, agree with Luke here. But at the same time, people are going to be looking for new experiences, and they're going to be looking for new content, right? They don't want to see the same thing over and over and over again. So it's a fine line to walk, and maybe similar to what we do on the technology side, you've got an R&D group, and that R&D group is constantly kind of pushing the border and trying to find those areas where they can add improvement, and then let the education flow out to the rest of the organization. I mean, I think that's a reasonable approach.
I just think the most critical thing is that you engage in this process on purpose. It's not driven just by curiosity. You have to think about how you're molding the organization and adopting new ideas. Because, our workflow has to change all of the time.
it ought to be fun too, right? If you think about it,
absolutely.
because if you're not having fun with it, then you're probably in the wrong line of work.
And I just think that because it is so much fun, there's a natural inclination to just go have a great time with it.
Yeah.
And some people get sucked down that rabbit hole. So if you don't know how you're adopting innovation on purpose, then you might get sucked in.
Yeah, no, that is the challenge, right? How do you innovate, but also keep the lights on? And it's something that honestly we struggle with it still. It's like, because we have folks on the team who are really, excited about the new technology, and I want to give them as much time as they can to explore it, bring it back to the team. But to your point, I don't get to wall them off, and I unfortunately don't have an R&D department. So it's a struggle, but it's exciting too. It's like I say, I mean, I am definitely someone who's attracted to the shiny new toys, and I absolutely want to see what's happening. But we can't forget, the bottom line is every day we got to turn down our video. So it's just a balance.
The funny thing is we do call each other periodically and go, did you see this thing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. That was the first time we were talking about Lucid Link. It was like, this makes no sense that it would work this way. So we do kind of battle test it on each other first. Just, as technologists, I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Maybe one last quick comment that I think is a different answer than I mentioned before. Maybe one way of innovation is by getting different talent that has different ways of doing things. And this whole concept of remote teams gives you that ability that you never had before.
True. It's probably the biggest game changer, right? When you start to put people together that wouldn't normally meet in an everyday scenario, teams that are across cultures, across geographies, you really can boost collaboration. And if you put some time, put some effort, put some thought around how you're going to embrace that, how you're going to harness their creativity, you can really do a lot. We are probably out of time. I see the next panel.
You are out of time, but thank you.
See, geez, here's the voice of God.
But Mark, thank you for filling in on this. You did a great job. Thanks for everybody. There's some friends here. Zach, you came out. Luke, Dave, the two Daves. Great conversation. We're going to continue these conversations virtually. There's no time for formal Q&A, but there will be virtual follow-up. So stay tuned for news about that.